Everyone who's dialed in. Thank you for joining the second of our series with the Nigerian FCCPC or in continuance of the Primerio series in conversation with antitrust agencies. So I'm delighted to be joined today again by Hugh Hollman, partner at A&O Shearman in the antitrust team and based in the US and Brussels office. And then a very, very special warm welcome to Florence, who is head of the FCCPC's chief legal officer of the FCCPC. Very good to have you join us. I'm Mike Curry. I'm a director at Primerio and sit in the antitrust practice in Johannesburg, but practice across the region. Florence, we had a very interesting discussion last week with your colleague, Christiana, on merger control. But today's discussion is really focusing on some of the more or the enforcement activities in the restrictive practices section. And again, similar to last week's theme, I think for our audience, what we wanted to unpack in a very short space of time is key sort of highlights of enforcement activity and any policy developments, legislative developments, anything like that, which both the local and the international antitrust community might want to take note of. We were chatting a few minutes before this. We obviously hosted our co-chaired the IBA competition conference with the FCCPC 2 years ago, and there was a great enthusiastic reception, both from the private bar but also from the agency. A lot was discussed. There was a lot on the horizon 2 years ago in terms of the plans, enforcement activity. But the one comment which emerged was a surprise of a lack of enforcement on the restrictive practices side. A lot of merger control, obviously a young agency, and I think the views expressed, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, the views expressed that one of the takeaways from that session is that the FCCPC certainly had a lot of enforcement activity on their radar, while at the same time not wanting to necessarily be a bull in the china shop. We're still doing a lot of monitoring of markets. So to set the scene, sort of give us a bit of a sense, 2 years after that, 2024, you've been sort of fully operational for, 5 to 6 years now. On the enforcement side, where would you say your agency is dedicating most of its time, its resources, with reference to either the cases, sectors? Give the audience a bit of a feel of what's been going on and what. Lawrence, you back?
I'm back. I've been here. Sorry, I just noticed that my camera was a bit
Okay.
stiff.
No,
But yeah.
no problem. Give us a little bit of sense of where the agency is focusing the activities in the last while and what you've been busy with.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks to the Primerio team for having me. I heard that you had a brilliant session with Mrs. Subana, and it's a privilege to be here myself. With regards to where the commission is at the moment, I think you've done a good job with the background. The commission is barely 5 years old, competition-wise. You know that we do have a dual mandate to include consumer protection. But I would focus on the competition aspect of things. And you are right, we did have this conversation some 2 years back. And at the time, we were literally still trying to find our feet. I can't say that we've completely found our feet, but we're doing our best. In the last 2-3 years, we have come up with more, we've developed our regulatory roadmap to include both abuse of dominance, restrictive agreements. We've provided several clearance with respect to our merger review regulations. We've done, I believe, to the point of conclusion, I believe at this point should be about 2 or 3 anti-competitive enforcement cases. So just to say that in the last year, we've been a bit slower, and that's because we've had at least 2 leadership changes in the last 6 months. And with leadership changes, the priorities differ. So I would say that we've been a bit slower, but we're still at it. And with respect to our priorities, we're still prioritizing already open investigations, and they've been more abuse of dominance focused. And that's also because if you consider what it is to bring a cartel case and the fact that the FCCPA criminalizes such conduct, it's very difficult to bring such investigations to a close very quickly because the burden of proof is very high and we rely on concrete and credible information, which generally makes the investigations slower. But the regulatory roadmap, we're at it. Investigations might be a bit slower, but we have concluded a number of investigations.
And Florence, on your last remark that the burden of proof is a lot higher on the cartel side, is that because the actual evidentiary onus, sort of you need to get sort of beyond reasonable doubt standard of evidence, or is it because of the anti-competitive effects that you're finding the challenges?
Well, the way the law is couched, it's beyond reasonable doubt. It's upon conviction. Although the commission does have an administrative route, which allows us to consider the effect or likely effect that the conduct would have in the market, the way the law itself, which is the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act, is couched is it depends on conviction, which means that because it's criminalized, it means that you have to meet the burden of proof of beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because a lot of antitrust agencies and you, from your experience as well, would probably look at cartel conduct and say that's the easier of the cases typically to prosecute, given that you typically have per se presumptions of anti-competitive conduct, and as long as you can show the agreement exists, you kind of 9/10 of the way there.
Exactly, but then you know that the agreements could be tacit. You may not see it. It could be a signal, and so that's why it's difficult. We must meet that evidentiary burden of proof.
All right, let's stick with cartels while we're at it. The agency has conducted a number of dawn raids. We know you spoke about this and that you were going to use dawn raids. You have now used dawn raids. Give us a little bit of insight into how effective they've been, how frequently you've used them. Do you anticipate more dawn raids being utilized? What's the success story been like in respect of dawn raids so far?
Well, I think the best way to respond to this is to quickly distinguish between what we consider dawn raids and what we consider our usual surveillance and investigation work. One is proactive, and one depends a lot on the information that we receive. And dawn raids are generally considered quite expensive because you have to consider the security of personnel, security of the assets, and all of that good stuff. So when we do our usual surveillance work, it's our proactive step in discovering what the market looks like. It's different from dawn raids, and it doesn't mean that if they do find any activity considered untoward, they cannot rectify it right there on the field. But with dawn raids, it takes a lot of preparation. It takes a lot of considering the information we currently have, what are the things that we expect to find when we go to the field or to the premises. And it does take a lot of information and preparation. And so we rely heavily on that. And so dawn raids are not something that we do quite often. I know that I've only participated in about 2 or 3 dawn raids, and that's with respect to digital money lending and other investigations. But for us, we find it very costly. We rely heavily on information. And so to the question on whether we will be seeing more dawn raids, you definitely will be seeing more dawn raids. We have an excellent track record because we don't just go out and conduct dawn raids. Before we go out, there's some kind of information that we have. And because we're not looking at actual offenses, we're looking at the likelihood We go there and we find the information that we need and we bring it back, we analyze, and they've been very successful. So yes, you will be seeing more done rates, but again, it's in the hands of the public. We want quality information. We hope that we have demonstrated our will and determination in the workspace so that there's public confidence to provide the information that's required for us to go for these done rates. But yes, the commission will certainly be seeing doing more done rates, and we have a very successful track record.
Mike, if I can just quickly jump in on the dawn rate question. There have been a few cases where you have investigated parties being obstructive during dawn raids.
Sorry?
Where parties have been described as obstructive during dawn raids, or investigated for being obstructive. Could you explain more or less what the type of behaviors that you have seen? And then could you also talk a little bit about how you would see perhaps outside counsel being present and working with you in order to be able to ensure more sort of collaborative dawn raid?
Excellent, and you're very right. It's a serious consideration when we're going to put out personnel in an area that we're not sure what to expect. We've been at dawn raids where even with all the reconnaissance work that we did in advance of the dawn raid, we met heavy obstruction. We did have security personnel, members of the police, and all of that with us, but when we got into the premises, we realized that we had more than 500 to 800 people, and we were barely 30, 35 members of staff. And so, yes, that initial preparation, the reconnaissance work is very important. We've learned that firsthand. Obstruction is penalized under the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act, the FCCPA. And the Commission has indeed filed criminal charges in the past against businesses that have erred by being obstructive. In fact, recently, the court fined a respondent for failure to, provide certain information to the commission and just general obstruction of the commission's activity. Actually, it was a prison sentence, but you can pay fine in its stead. So yes, obstruction goes beyond just physically preventing the commission from coming into the premises. It could go as far as refusal to answer questions. It could go as far as destruction of records, delaying the entire process. And so during our planning stages, we usually prepare for such eventualities, include whether or not they would want counsel present at the time. And so what we do with respect to whether or not they would want legal representation whilst the dawn raid is being conducted, when we enter into the place and we secure our assets, whether it's the mobile phones, the laptops, the servers, or even the personnel, the key personnel or persons of interest. What we do is once we've secured them, we give them a reasonable period of time to get their counsel in the premises. And we expect that counsel already understands, the ramifications for obstruction and would provide appropriate guidance to their clients.
And in part of those procedures, how do you handle legally privileged materials? Do you have special procedures in place to handle those?
Indeed. So what happens is we usually, in the preparation stage, we usually have bags already marked and designated for privileged materials ready. And so once the respondent declares that the particular information is legal privilege, we immediately put it in once in a bag, seal it up, and those decisions will be made later. It is not on the field that we make those decisions. I mean, there are times when it's pretty obvious this information is public notice. There's no way you can be claiming some kind of privilege over it, even if it's between you and your counsel. As long as it's information that has now come to the public, we will not accept it as privilege. So those minor considerations can be made right there during the dawn raids, but if we cannot reach some kind of agreement, it's usually locked up in a separate bag, tagged for privileged decisions, and that's now brought to the head office, and a different set of people or a team of people now look at it, and there is some kind of guideline that's used in determining whether a particular information is covered by privilege or not. And once that decision is made, if we do consider it covered by privilege, we immediately return to the parties without making any decisions on it. But if we do think that it's not covered by privilege for one reason or the other, we would immediately write back to the parties and tell them, on these correspondence, emails, or information that we have, which you have declared privilege over, we will not pay that much attention to it, because as far as we're concerned, it's either been published or it's not confidential information. It doesn't have anything for which the assertion should be justified.
And I assume the bags are for the hard copy materials, but what about all the electronic hard drives and the like that there may be? Do you do a forensic search, and then how would you handle the legally privileged materials that might be included with an email, for example?
And so that's the same thing. We allow parties to tell us what they consider to be privileged. Again, the experience that we have has been both electronic and hard copy materials, and they have electronically informed us that, oh, if it's this particular email, it's privileged, and so please do not open it or do not make any decision based on this or that. And so it applies both ways. Those decisions will still be made in advance of the actual analysis work that's to be done for the materials that we received, and the decision will be conveyed before the technical team responsible for analyzing the entire material comes in and takes possession of the material.
And I presume the FCCPC, just like a lot of other antitrust agencies, come in and you just clone computers, clone cell phones, so clone all of it. WhatsApp messages, it's all included in what you take on the day, and then there's a process ex post. If someone's disputing, that WhatsApp correspondence is personal, and they don't want the FCCPC to trawl through their WhatsApp correspondence, there's then a mechanism to try and resolve that, which is sometimes quite an entertaining exercise when you're on the
exactly
involved.
Exactly. Indeed, Michael, it's very interesting, and I have a personal experience with that. We got into a particular dawn raid, and my personal chats, you can't get into my WhatsApp. And it was a very simple decision for me to make. The company wasn't given official lines to its staff. And so you were having both official conversations and personal conversations on WhatsApp. I'm going to have that information. I'm sorry. It was pretty easy. We've had a situation where someone deleted their entire WhatsApp app. And the only way we knew that was when we were looking at other people's WhatsApp conversation, and we saw that this person who doesn't have WhatsApp was right there. So it's really interesting. But yes, we do that. And these are all ways of obstructing the process and just making sure that the commission doesn't have the information it seeks. And these are penalized under the Act.
And just one quick follow-up. When you do these dawn raids, do you also plan on interviews with folks on the ground during the dawn raid? Is that also part of your process?
Yes, it is part of our process. Not always the case, but it is in the pre-dawn raid sessions, we plan for such situations. So for example, in the situation where we saw someone deleting conversations, we immediately did a hearing. And because he was caught on record, we had no choice but to immediately conduct the investigative hearing with him right there and then. So yes, we do prepare for such, and usually we go, part of the team has a commissioner for oath who takes the particular witness on oath right there and then.
And is the witness obliged to answer substantive questions there and then? So Clearly, a witness who, if you ask them where is the archives and he refused to answer, where's the data room and he refused to answer, clearly being uncooperative, you would expect an employee to answer those types of questions. But if an investigator were to put substantive questions that may be incriminating, either in the sense of criminal liability, but or in a lesser sense of antitrust liability, were you discussing prices with this party B? Is an employee expected to there and then answer under oath without legal representation? I know you mentioned that you'd normally give him an option to get it, but what's the expectation?
So, except it's information that we already have. I mean, one of the rules to our investigative hearings would be don't ask a question you don't already know the answer to. And so usually we'll refrain from substantive questions. However, if it's necessary, maybe we found something right there and then, and we can just say, oh, this is an email dated, blah, 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 or a conversation between you and blah, blah, blah. We just need you to clarify that is your email, something like that. So we would expect a response. But again, we never force anyone to make a response that could incriminate them or, the company or anything like that. We expect that the team at the back, behind the scene, would be able to ask those questions and give them time to prepare their responses, give them time to come to the commission and deal with more substantial. It really depends on a case-by-case basis what we see, and we'll make those decisions right there at the field.
Yeah, that's fair. But if I the essence of it is the questions you ask and your expectations are questions aimed at facilitating your search and search and seizures and the investigation. It's not at trying to solicit responses and evidence, at least not oral evidence. All right. Well, dawn raids is a fascinating topic, but let's move on. Keeping on cartels, leniency programs. Talk us a little through how effective it's been. What are the trends? Do you think it's a tool that has aided your investigations, notwithstanding your earlier remarks about cartel prosecutions? Are companies taking you up? Not yet. Status?
Sorry, Micah. I'm not sure if it's my my internet or what issues. I didn't get the question. Sorry.
No problem. I was talking about your corporate leniency policy or program. If you could give us a bit of an update on what are the key trends, status, efficacy of that tool.
Yes. So we do have two different programs. Again, remember that I had said most of the anti-competitive conduct in the FCCPA are criminalized. And so we had to create the good thing FCCPA is it allows us to draft regulations that would help our work a lot more easier. And one of the things that we did was pursuant to Section 163, I believe, set up regulations or guidelines that allows us to do work that's more administrative rather than go through the long process of criminalization of as stipulated in the law. And so what we do is release the leniency rules as well as cooperation and assistance framework. And the leniency rules is mainly for cartel conduct, while the cooperation and assistance is with respect to any other, whether it's consumer protection or it's even anti-competitive, but not as grievous as cartel. And so what happens is these rules come to play at any point in time. The businesses can just say, hey, I have something to tell you. I want to report myself, and just come in. On the other hand, they could decide to come in at the point where they have commenced investigations. At other times, it could be right in the middle or at the end of the entire process. So yes, we do have a leniency policy or rule, and we have a cooperation and assistance policy. Both are to tailor the respondents away from potential criminal convictions to more administrative procedures.
And how active are you seeing participants approaching the FCCPC? Is it are you seeing any trends? Are you still seeing a lot of reluctance in parties engaged in the commission, too much uncertainty, or are you seeing parties knocking on your door more frequently now than before?
Oh, we're seeing people utilizing it more frequently. Of course, at the beginning, it was difficult. But the moment that they notice that, oh, there are other ways around this, we don't have to go through this criminal procedure, we're seeing more parties utilize the cooperation and assistance framework. We haven't had a situation where someone has come under leniency rules, but cooperation and assistance, definitely. We've had people come under it to say, okay, you know what, we're willing to cooperate and assist the commission, but, you know, this is where we stand as a business. Can you reduce the penalty? Can we save face reputation-wise? That type of thing, yes.
Do you coordinate any of these types of investigations with other agencies, either within the region or worldwide? And if so, if you wouldn't mind providing some examples for us, perhaps?
Sometimes we do. We've had a situation where we had to call the German Bundeskartell in one of our investigations because we realized that they did have a lot more experience than we did. And so what we do with our collaborations with other agencies is that we develop these MOUs with them. We call them up. We meet at various functions, and they know about us. And yeah, for example, when we were commencing our investigation on the digital market, platform markets, more like, or rather, contact-based instant messaging market. When we started that investigation, we got in touch with the Bundeskartell. We told them that, you know, this is how we were looking at it. We had issued an order and notice to show cause to the respondents, but this is the theory of harm, and we would like them to educate us or tell us more about how they approached the case when it was before the German Competition Authority, and they were able to provide that guidance. They're slightly different cases, but they were able to tell us, you know, how they looked at it. And we were able to learn from their wealth of experience, leverage on that. And I believe it's improved our own investigation.
Do you look to any other networks or authorities for assistance in this regard? Who might also be, who might be able to assist you in your procedures or guide you in cases that you might be focused on?
Yes, I mean, we are parts of different working groups and different little groups. So, for example, the African Competition Forum, we are members of the Merger Working Group, we're members of the Unilateral Conduct Working Group, and all of that. We do participate in the International Competition Network meetings. We participate in different meetings. There's the African Digital Market Group that we have also formed, originated by the Nigerian Competition Authority, the FCCPC, and we were able to get South Africa, Egypt, and a number of other competition authorities to participate in that.
Let's move then to. Sorry, did I interrupt you there?
No. Well, I just want to ask Florence about the British American Tobacco case, just because
go for it. That's where I was going. So go.
Oh, okay. So great minds think alike. So at the end of last year, Florence, for those who may not have heard about it, but I'm sure that they did because it did hit all the headlines. The authority fined British American Tobacco, I think, about $110 million after a 3-year probe into practices by the cigarette maker that they had, I think, penalized retailers for giving equal prominence to other brands. And so I was hoping to hear more about the case from you, the investigation, and any details that you feel you can share at this time.
Yes, of course. It was one of our biggest investigations that we concluded late 2022, I believe. And it was only just announced in 2023, just out of obligation. But the investigation had concluded in 2022. And this investigation started with our normal surveillance work, nothing onwards. You know, we went out for surveillance work, and in one of the warehouses where we were conducting our surveillance, there was a employee of BAT that just appeared unnecessarily obstructive. And that was quite suspicious because, you know, there was just no need for the way she was behaving. In any case, they seized her laptop. The team seized her laptop, did a jailbreak, and was able to get some information that confirmed our suspicion. And, you know, we immediately issued what we call a summons to produce, detailing a number of documents we wanted BAT to provide. And in unusual fashion, BAT took the commission to court, seeking an injunction. Again, that raised some suspicion because we didn't think that there was anything wrong in the request that we were making. And we, of course, we knew we had jurisdiction. Anyway, the case was eventually struck out, and we went ahead and procured a warrant to search BAT since they hadn't provided the documents that we requested. We conducted a dawn raid. It was 72 hours, non-stop dawn raid at the BAT headquarters. And as they say, the rest is history. Thanks to the special investigative team that was set up by the then Chief Executive Babatunde Irukera and I leading the investigation, we were able to discover some things that we felt were quite an abuse of consumer rights as well as anti-competitive. You know, so the oppressing retailers to give their products more prominence compared to their competitors, interfering with government to impose burdens, tax burdens on their competitors that they weren't subject to, that type of thing, stock building to evade taxes, that type of thing. So we felt that even though this was going to be one of those cases where we should have seriously penalized, we thought that because to the commission this was a first airing company, there was no history of bad behavior. I mean, from our perspective as a new competition authority, based off administrative penalty regulations and the fact that the business decided to come under cooperation and assistance, we reduced the penalty drastically for them.
When was was there sort of a juncture where the company went from being very litigious to being very cooperative? Was there a clear line in the sand drawn somewhere? Was it evidence that the FCC produced? Did you produce a charge sheet? Was there sort of a referral affidavit? How did that come about? If you can,
I'm sorry, Mike, I lost you. I lost you for the most part of that question. Sorry, can you come again?
You're sort of giving the overview, and BAT started out to be seemingly quite litigious, and towards the end of it, quite cooperative. And I was wondering where was the change in approach, and whether that was prompted after an investigation. Did you prepare a report or a complaint referral, and how did that dynamic shift?
I guess the approach changed the moment the investigative hearings started. And we started to confront them with information that we had gathered from the maze of information that we collected. So once they started to see their own conversations, once the staff also understood that they were just as criminally liable as the business was, they began to realize that, you know, we need to be a bit more cooperative, and then they came under the cooperation and assistance framework of the commission.
I see. And you're speaking a little bit about the theories of harm, and we're not going to have time to go into detail, but it seemed to be a bit of a mix of sort of competition, antitrust theories of harm, and consumer theories of harm. Is that a fair summation? Okay.
Indeed, you are correct. Yes.
Okay.
So, Florence, maybe if that might be a good segue to talk a little bit more generally about some of the other vertical theories of harm that you have, such as resale price maintenance and MFN clauses. Is this an area of focus for you? And if so, again, it would be great if you could provide some examples of the types of cases that you've seen.
So let me put it this way. The commission has not had any case that it had specifically dealt with respect to MFNs or retail price maintenance. However, the Act expressly provides for such situations. And with respect to retail price maintenance, it is without more illegal. It's wrong. We're not allowed to do that. But it's a bit tricky when it comes to most favored nation clauses. And that's because with those clauses, it's not inherently wrong to have those clauses in agreements. And so what we would do is would usually look at it on a case-by-case basis. We do not consider, for example, a recommended price as a retail price maintenance, if you know what I mean. So for example, if you have a maximum price also, we wouldn't consider it a retail price maintenance strategy in any way. And it may not be considered as offending the FCCPA. Now, the same applies with most favored nation clauses. What the commission would like to see is what are the likely effects of this clauses in agreements going to be? Are there any efficiencies to having it? So there are situations where, take for example, a small business competing with bigger players in the field might want to have some kind of protection from the upstream and decides, let's put this clause there just to make sure that I am getting the best deal when I'm putting your products out in the market. And so it really depends. It's on a case-by-case basis. We've not had any specific experience that I can refer you to, but this is generally how, we would look at it.
So just quickly, taking a step back on resale price maintenance. So by the sounds of things, you said it's just wrong. So is that a per se violation?
Yes, it's a per se violation because it's expressly stated by the law that it is illegal to create a retail price maintenance.
But I think you said that doesn't apply to maximum resale price maintenance. So that's only minimum resale price maintenance? It's
just minimum retail price maintenance. So if you're able to demonstrate some kind of efficiency with a maximum price that you have put out there or a recommended price, we can look at the efficiencies and exempt those types of agreements. Yes.
And just for clarity, does the per se violation apply in every instance where it may occur, or does it only apply to dominant firms?
In every instance that it would occur. And really what we're looking at is really effects, so you don't have to be dominant. If whatever it is that you're doing has some kind of effect or likely has an effect in the market, we would look at it, and you don't have to be a dominant player.
And presumably parties could indicate that it's a recommended price, but there's not freedom of pricing autonomy for the downstream retailer. I imagine there's that flexibility, or is it even that recommended price something that the agency frowns upon?
The recommended price is not something we frown upon. Again, it's all going to be taken on a case-by-case basis. It's easy for a business to say, "Oh, it's just a recommended price." I mean, the supplier does not have to abide by the rules. So they have their discretions and they maintain their independence. But at the end of the day, if in the course of investigation we're able to find that there's some kind of punishments for not maintaining that price, then You might call it a recommendation. If it quacks like a duck, if it swims like a duck, it is a duck, and we would consider it a retail price maintenance and penalize for it. Yes.
And just for clarity, that the penalty would be both criminal and civil.
Maybe not and. The penalty is criminalized by the law, but then if you cooperate and assist, or you come under our leniency framework, we might be able to take you away from the criminal procedure and bring you to the administrative procedure.
I wanted to ask briefly on the sort of civil redress regime, victims of anti-competitive behavior. Now, of course, in a relatively newly established jurisdiction, the focus is firstly on actually prosecuting cases. So I don't imagine there to be too much a case law of this yet. But just in terms of the architecture, the thinking, the FCCPC's thinking, is that something you are mindful of, or are you taking an approach which I think you mentioned the Bundeskatalan mentioned earlier, where their priority is detect and stop the anti-competitive behavior, and they're not really focusing or encouraging civil redress because that might deter parties from coming forward in the first place. Does the FCCPC have that kind of discussion, that kind of policy, or is that still something that's being developed?
Well, I'm going to speak from my own perspective. I can't speak for the commission because, again, you are right. This is not an area that we've done. There's anything that we've done. But I'm going to say that unlike the Bundeskartell, we also have the consumer protection mandate, and part of the provisions of the FCCPA is that we can grant damages. We can grant compensation to victims. However, it's a very, very tricky area for us. We've tried to consider that. Sorry about the background noise. We've tried to consider that in the past, and it's a very difficult thing to do. And so would usually prefer that people go to court to get their damages or compensation, except you can show a direct causal link to us. We are unable to truly compensate victims of anti-competitive conduct. Again, I'm not saying that the Commission does not have jurisdiction to do that. There are situations that it might decide to do that, but we've not had that situation, and the law provides that we can grant some kind of compensation or damages to victims of anti-competitive conduct. Yes.
So Florence, I think we spoke quite a bit on a number of different areas, but are there any priority sectors for the agency that you are expending most of your resources in investigating? Anything in particular that you're focused on?
Again, just like I said earlier, this year alone, we've seen 2 leadership changes, and that sort of slows the work down, because in terms of priorities, but for the law that says you have a dual mandate, protects consumers and protects and promotes competition, the day-to-day decision making rests in the hand of the executive management. And so if the leadership is changing, the priorities will change. But at the moment, I can say that the anti-competitive investigations that we have already opened are still ongoing. The newest executive vice chairman of the FCCPC hasn't resumed because I believe that he still needs to be confirmed by the Senate, and after that confirmation, he would get a letter from the presidency, and that's when he would resume. Until he resumes, I'm unable to say what the priorities are, but I can assure you that nothing has stopped. Government is a continuum, and we will continue to do our job, and nothing has stopped. So the current open cases are still open. We're still receiving complaints, and yeah.
I see we are about to hit our 45-minute mark, and so I think that might be an appropriate juncture to pause there. I don't see any questions on the chat group. If there are any questions, you have about 60 seconds to get them across to me, or maybe 30 seconds, so that there's 30 seconds for Florence to answer them. Assuming there are no questions, Florence, certainly from my side, thank you very much for availing yourself, as you always do, and for your frank and enthusiastic participation. Thank you. We certainly appreciate it. You, thank you for joining us. It's always valuable to get your insights and participation, so I absolutely appreciate that. And we look forward to engaging and monitoring and watching the FCCPC as it seems to grow from strength to strength.
Thanks a lot, Michael, and it's my pleasure to meet you, Hugh. Hopefully we'll see in other quarters. But thank you for having me.
Looked forward to it, Florence. Thank you. Thank you for your invaluable insights. It's been very educational, and thank you, Mike, for the facilitation. It's been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Thank you, everyone, for who dialed in. Thank you. Bye-bye.